5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's up, family? What's up, family? I am so glad to be with you. You are in the right place. This is the Well Encounter, and we are live. That's right, we are live. Welcome to this Thursday night, January 14th. I want to give a start by giving a special shout out to my mom, whose birthday is today. Happy birthday, Queen, the queen of my life, my spiritual wings, the person who is the only person is the reason I am here, outside of also my father. But Mom, I love you, and I'm glad that you are born on this day. Listen, this is the Well, and we are live. Our topic tonight is the intersection of hip hop and church, part two, or part deux, right? And we are coming to you with an amazing conversation where we're continuing from last week. I want you to like this post. I want you to share this post as much as you can. If you're not aware, we're having a contest. The Well is having a contest where we are giving away both a hoodie and a t-shirt. And I have on a hoodie now from Park Royale that says it's not the will of God if it goes against the word of God. My boy David over at Park Royale sort of created these hoodies under the inspiration of the Well. I talked to him and he was led to move and do something like this. So please go check out his site. I'll talk about that a little later as well. But please like this post, share this post, comment, and do it as much as you can. We want you to encounter the Well, become the Well, emerge and share the Well. I want you to type that in our comments if you're watching. Encounter, become, emerge, and share. Encounter, become, emerge, and share. And that's all because that's what our motto is here. Encounter the Well, become the Well, emerge and share the Well. Encounter Jesus, become more like Jesus, emerge and share Jesus. Encounter love, become love, emerge and share love. And of course, we always want you to understand that everything we do at the Well should lead you down the path to the 5 P's. Those 5: peace and power. Passion, purpose, promise, peace, and power. Everything we do here should lead you to discover one of those 5 P's. Again, tonight we're talking about the intersection of hip hop and church. This has been a conversation that I feel is taboo, and everything that the Well is doing this year in 2021, our theme is out the box. So we're trying to hit out the box on every conversation, every dialogue that we have, and we're based on asking the right questions. We want those questions to lead you to do the internal research for yourself. You and God can have a conversation. God lives inside of you, and as you have that conversation, it forces you to think about, are you just accepting things because of tradition? Are you only agreeing with stuff because it's how you were taught or how you were brought up? And this should force you to do the internal investigation to find out what exactly are the answers to the questions that exist in the universe. And it should be out of the box. So let's bring in our dope panel that we have for tonight, and we're going to welcome them in. Super producer Jackie from Amplify Network, go ahead and bring in our panelists. What's up, everybody? What's up?
Yo, what's poppin'?
Good evening.
Amazing, amazing. Listen, I am so honored to be with y'all tonight, man. I mean, look, let me just say this. Last week we had a dope conversation, and I think it was out the box. We had so many people who were engaged, who, hold on real quick, you got to move just because we can't hear you. We had so many people who engaged with us. Welcome to the Road of Technology and Family, right? We had so many people who engaged with us, man. To this day, I am getting text messages and emails from folks who all were saying, listen, I never thought about hip hop that way. Folks who say, I don't know if I totally agree, but I will tell you that I am open to hearing more dialogue. I'm open to receiving more. I'm open to learning more. That's what the Well is all about. And so successfully, that was accomplished last week. And look, I'm so happy that that two of you all have been a part of that process, and tonight is no different when we add a third person. So let me just go around and give a brief introduction so we can get to the conversation. You guys met two folks last week. I'm bringing on one new one this week. Brennen Boose, my brother from another mother who's down south. I always say that's my guy. He comes and hails to us from Nashville, Tennessee. Brennen is a dope person who just received this year, 2020, last year. He graduated with 3 master's degrees. Very educational. That's right. Clap it up for that, because that takes dedication. That takes dedication, right? Um, he is a person who is a marketing and advertising guru. He is always bold enough to speak the truth, and he does not mind being a rebel for justice, because he believes in evolution. As you can see from his shirt, evolve or die. Brennen, is there anything else you want to kind of share about yourself, or just say hello to the people and let them know that you're here?
Listen, man, just glad to be here. Glad to be here with these distinguished gentlemen, and get to talk about something that's not so distinguished. I like to get nitty gritty and get in the mud. We got it out the mud, so I like to get down in there. But man, just appreciative of this opportunity. And bro, Ray, I'm not gonna let you do these wild introductions anymore. If we don't give you one, so if you don't want yours, I'm just chill.
Well, I'll keep going and then I'll just magically skip past my own. But uh, I'm gonna move down right below you is 3J or Jew Jackson, who I always say, because we share the last name, we are brothers. But we're brothers because even more than that, we have the same spiritual father that connects us. 3J and I have known each other for years. He is an amazing hip hop MC. He is a minister in his own right. 3J has, for the last couple of years, ever since I've known him, always been a person who's all about positive influence and positive change. He is always invoking positive change amongst his friends, his family, and his community at large. He's just a super dope guy. So, 3J, say hello to the people, man.
What's going on, everybody? To God be the glory for another day. My name is 3J, which stands for Jehovah God, Jesus Christ, and Justice. Without those three, there'll be no me. So I'm done. Let's go.
All right, hey, listen, short and sweet.
And that's
And
that.
then,
He an artist. He got the EPK down, bro. He already knew that. You need to
I'm like,
drop
it's
for
a
me.
cipher? I'm like, it's a cipher right now? Hold up. Whoa.
It's a radio
Whoa, it's
drop
not a
right
rapper.
there. He had it ready for him.
that's it. That's it. And then listen, of course, new to the panel, but not new to this topic, man, or this conversation is my brother, Dr. Tony Keith Jr., who is below me, and he is someone who was just sort of recently coming to my network. We're working on a project together, and I'll share a little bit about that. But he was brought into my network by Minister LeVar Jones, who's been on with us before.
Good
Um,
brother.
Great brother, man. Dr. Tony is just an amazing guy who we're going to get into a conversation about him, but I'll share with you that he has a PhD in education. He is an educational MC. He is on the hip hop scene, but he is changing lives and motivating lives and influencing lives for the better by challenging the current systems of
Oh
traditions that we
wow.
have in place. And he is moving the crowd in all sorts of ways. He is also a dope MC, because he spits poetry like no other. So,
What?
Dr. Keith, would you like to share a little bit with the people?
Yo! Yo, Banana. So first of all, I must just say, yo, it's nice to be here with y'all. Peace. Like, I'm so happy to be here this evening. It's like I'm beyond excited. I feel like that introduction was dope. I bring y'all greetings from my kitchen. I live in Ward 5 in DC, and my hometown. I'm a native Washingtonian, and yeah, I got a really interesting, fun story, and got some hip hop things. But I'm just like really glad to be here. And this technology situation, this is the most hip hopist, Zoomist kind of thing I've ever seen. Shout out to you and whatever else is going on here.
It's lit.
Yeah, and I really I did not expect to see all the pictures of myself. I'm like, that's me. That's me. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm good. I'm good.
um, I also want to give a shout out to all the people who have tuned in. So, Brother LeVar, who is watching, Minister LeVar, and Susie Q, and Minister Monica, and all the folks that have turned in, Sister Terry, Sister Annie. Also on YouTube, Joyfield, who talks about Go Go DC, and all the folks
Mm.
that have joined us from all across the world, all across the country. We welcome you to this conversation. Listen, let's move on right into our conversation.
Jump right
There
into
are
it.
a couple. That's it, man. Because we don't want to belabor the hour. So I want to start off talking to you, Dr. Keith. Your website is full of information. I had to read your website like maybe 3, 4, 5, 10 times because
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
just taken aback by all the stuff that you have accomplished. And you have coined this phrase, educational MC. Now, we're talking about hip hop, the intersection of hip hop and the church. But I think what's important for people in this one, we really want to sort of outline what hip hop is and how hip hop can influence people positively. You've done so much
Yeah.
research in that area. Um, why don't you just sort of talk to us about the role and the journey to becoming, what is an educational MC?
Okay.
Let's start there. What's an education
Yeah.
MC,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how'd you come up with the phrase?
There's a whole wonderful story here. So first, I should probably let the world know that I just like to tell stories. It's kind of my way of doing a thing, which is linked to hip hop, right? So I'm going to get there. But so just so that we all know in terms of just grounding the knowledge, the foundation about what hip hop is. And I'm not suggesting, by the way, that people who are listening and those on the panel don't know this information already. So much of hip hop is really about like just being authentic and acknowledging that people like have experience and like y'all already have assets and gifts. So anyway, hip hop, depending on how you tell the story, this is really important. Depending on how you tell the story, is as old as the moment enslaved Africans were dragged to the United States, right? And they already had a way of speaking, a way of being, whether it was the rhythm, whether it was the drum. There were already griots, there were already poets, there were already authors, there was already a whole society functioning that was literate and free and great. Now, when those individuals are captured and dragged and beaten and slaughtered and traumatized and they become enslaved African people on the continent of North America, there's a couple things that happen there. One, as we all know, there's a development of Christianity, right? Spirituality comes out of this. But what also comes out of this, what most people kind of forget about, is language, right? By this, I
Mm,
mean, right? This is the thing. So again, enslaved African people were already speaking their own languages, whether it was Yoruba, whether it's
mm,
Itwa, whether it's Kiswahili, whatever that
mm.
was. And then can you just imagine some person whose skin color looks completely different from you has kidnapped you, dragged you to a place, and is screaming at you, and you have no idea what they're saying, but they're telling you to learn their language. Enslaved African people were
Sound
not
like church
given
folk.
access to. Okay, there we go. Okay, that's a good point, Brennan, right? And think about it. Enslaved Africans weren't given access to the written word, right? Because they were told you are not allowed to read. The only written word they had access to was the Bible, right? But the other thing
That's
is
it.
the other way that they could express literacy, since they didn't have access to the written word, was through the spoken word, right? Enslaved African people and those of us who are black and brown descendants of these people, that is still embedded in our practice. It's still embedded naturally in who we are, right? So things like African American vernacular English would be a real language, because something like telling an enslaved African to learn a particular language without giving them instructions for it, out of that develops something where black people speak like this, that, they. In the DC, DMV, we'd be like, everybody, mother, father. That is legitimate. This is real, and I need y'all to know this now. This is legitimate language. There's research. I need everybody to hear this. There is like actual research, proven research that links the way black people speak at home with the way people in parts of West Africa and more also speak. It's built into the linguistic structure. But what happens is schools and white supremacy, etc., tell us we speak wrong, we learn wrong, and so then we're taught to like code switch, right? So here we go. Enslaved Africans come with language, a way of knowing, and access to their own spirituality through rhythm and drum and dance and song, right? And then that, like just anything, serves as a foundation for hip hop. So that's one way to tell the history. The other way that you can tell this history is those descendants of enslaved Africans came, people like us, but like who became youth in the 1970s. 1973 is actually the year where hip hop culture is supposed to have emerged, right? My screen froze, but I don't know if I should keep talking.
Yeah, we can still hear you. We still see you too.
Okay, solid. I'm just keep going. I'm gonna let my screen be its thing. I was in the got it. No, literally, it's frozen. I'm just gonna keep going because I know y'all are out there, and so shout out to being an MC. I feel like there's a crowd out there. So anyway, so enslaved African folks. So what they wound up having to do was right. So I got it. 1973, South Bronx, New York. You have youth. These
Absolutely.
are young people who are living in the same exact kind of conditions that a lot of poor Black and brown youth and their families are experiencing today. What it's poverty, it's racism, it's drug-related violence, it's white supremacy, right? All of that was existing, right? These young people developed a culture that consists of 5 elements. Everybody who is paying attention, you need to know that hip hop culture has 5 elements to it, right? And this is all agreed upon. You can ask even Jay-Z, like as far as you want to go. First element,
Yeah.
first element, think about this. You a group of young people and you trying to get all the stress of racism and supremacy off of you, you gonna throw a party. You gonna do whatever you can do to bring everybody to come to this party. You're gonna plug up your microphone and outlets outside. You're gonna try to find some records. You're gonna do whatever you can to throw a ginormous party of love. This party actually happened in 1973 in Sedgwick Avenue, I think it's 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the South Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
Mad Black and brown
Mm-hmm.
folks came to this particular party, right? And you had legendary DJs spinning on the turntables, right? So one element of hip hop is DJing, right? Literally mixing beats, sampling music, and moving a crowd. DJs also move a crowd, right? You play the right music, you make people dance. That is moving a crowd. Think about MC, right? The second element of hip hop is actually an MC. You need somebody on the mic, right? Back then, nobody was really like doing like hardcore rap lyrics. It was more like the roof is on
Mm-hmm.
fire. And then the audience would be like, we don't need no water. This moment when the MC turns the mic at the audience is called call and response. Y'all know where else we see this is obviously in the church,
Church.
right? Tell your neighbor, pat your neighbor on the back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is moving a congregation like an MC would move a crowd at a party, right? But then you had MCs who began to start rhyming on the microphone over the beats. And this is where we get rap music, right? And I need everybody to know that rap music traditionally ain't nothing but poetry spoken over a rhythmic timed beat. And it must rhyme. I just want to be really clear about that, right? And so there's that thing. So you got rap music. I just have to say that. But this also distinguishes, for the record, other MCs. Again, I'm still on the second element. Other MCs, like me, I'm a spoken word artist and a poet. And so I perform poetry, and my poems sometimes rhyme, but sometimes they don't. But they're still used to move crowd. But I don't rap over a beat. I can't freestyle. Don't y'all ask me to battle rap. It is not my jam. I can't do it. But I can write a dope poem, memorize that joint, and spit it at a slam. You know what I mean? Like, give me. So that's the difference. Anyway, so you got DJing, MCing. The third thing you have is you at this party, there's a point where the DJ creates a break in the beat, literally, where they're just playing mad layered instrumentals. They might pull a drum out or something, and you said music, right? What happens is break dancers go in and start battle dancing. This is improvisational dance, and y'all probably seen it. It's also now an Olympic sport or something. I just learned, which is crazy, that hip hop is an Olympic sport,
I
but
did
not
not
an
know that.
academic
It
major.
came really hard.
Yo,
Within a couple of years, they're supposed to be putting breakdancing in the Olympics.
yep.
Yep.
Isn't that crazy? Yep. And
Hip
most people
hop.
don't even know it began with like young people in the South Bronx who were just, expressing themselves creatively and getting free, right, from racism and stuff, right? Um, was there another question?
Oh no, they just
No.
cheering you on,
No.
bro. That's your amen corner.
Okay, good.
That's your
Okay.
MC
That's your
moving the
amen
crowd.
corner.
So
Keep
keep
going.
That's what's up. Okay, so we got so we've got
We got
DJing,
DJ,
we've got MCing,
MC.
we've got breakdancing. Some people call it b-boying or b-girling, but I don't want to gender things, but this is breakdancing. So they're literally dancing
breaking.
on the break. of the beat. Hits break dances. Okay, back. Fourth element, most people don't even realize this, but it's actually written on the wall right behind you, Pastor, is graffiti. Y'all, graffiti is the fourth element of hip hop, right? So this is the thing. Think about this. If you a poor black or brown person and you need the world to know that you exist, right, that you are there, that you matter, you're going to do whatever, you're going to find whatever canvas that you can to paint your name, to paint your neighborhood. You'll use a 99-cent spray can. You'll do whatever you can. So they painted up all of the South Bronx, all around New York, letting people know y'all are pushing us to the side. Y'all, to be clear, what was happening in the 1970s was the city was building an actual expressway separating black and brown poor people from everybody else, right? Like it was the most blatant form of redlining and racism. I mean, there's plenty of that still going on today, but it was super bad. Anyway, so they developed that. So you got four elements. Now, the
Now,
fifth
before you
element,
get to the
this is,
fifth,
oh, go ahead.
let me just say
Come on,
this.
Pastor.
For all of the folks who have just come in, because there are people that are coming on is you're talking. Again, this is the intersection of hip hop and church. And Dr. Keith is the person who is now sharing with you, and we're talking about the 5 elements of hip hop. He's already gone down the list of DJing, number 1, number 2, being an MC, number 3, breakdancing, number 4, graffiti, and we're now on the 5th one. Go ahead, and we want you to like and share this so that other people can watch and get this knowledge, because this is some good wisdom and knowledge. So please share this post to your friends, and we have a hoodie and t-shirt giveaway for the people who share this the most. All right, number 5.
Oh, that's dope. That's dope. That's what's up. Ooh,
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this moment. Okay, number 5. Number 5 is called knowledge of self, right? There's this cat named Africa Bombada, right? He was on a different side of the Bronx, but he was a DJ, fire, and an MC, right? But he was also very much involved in trying to reduce tensions and fighting among street gangs in New York City, right? Especially between black and brown kids, the black spades and all that. So he was literally gathering up these kids who society said were bad and teaching them like, yo, do you know that you, like your history, like, yo, you come from African people, right? Like, or you come from people of the African diaspora. To be clear, Africans ain't just come to North America. They went everywhere around the globe, to be clear, right? Because matter of fact, Africa Bombada and so many other people who created hip hop at that party actually are children of immigrant parents, right, from the West Indies. So let's be clear, black people, we all over, we all over. And again, when I say, and to make that another link, when I said this before about that knowledge of self, like learning that your language is inherent to who you are. I just mentioned people from the West Indies. Some folks might speak patois or some version of that English or whatever. It's very similar to the way black people speak African American vernacular English. There's also an English in parts of West Africa. It's called West African Pidgin English. Same thing. So again, the way those slave ships dropped us off robbed us, so many of us, and I'm saying black and brown people specifically, of our two things: our understanding of ourselves, hence our knowledge of self, our powerful, like the internal thing that reminds us who we are and how powerful we are, right? And our language. Now, here's how we get to EdMCs. Those two things, that denial of knowledge of self and that denial of access to our language, built the foundations for American public education. Y'all, enslaved Africans were never really designed to be educated, right? It was, yo, y'all are chattel property. Your job, black women, is just to produce more slave labor so that we can kind of keep the economy of the United States running, right? That's literally what happened. So when I say chattel, literally black people's bodies were treated like actual property, right? So there was no understanding that, well, at some point, these freed property would need to be educated, right? So when schools began, enslaved African people and their descendants, the free black folks who had become literate because they were given access to read the Bible. Because enslaved Africans and black people knew white folks or our slave masters keep talking about there's freedom in that book. There's this book that they're reading, and in there, they keep talking about liberation and salvation and joy. And yeah, I'm trying to get there, so I need to get that book. So when slave owners started, I don't want to use the word conversion, but I would just sort of say when slave owners began to emphasize Christianity as a way of faith and religion and practice, what they did was they made enslaved black people literate. They gave them the Bible, and in there they had the
Right.
access to all the language, all the words of salvation and joy. And so preachers are like, yo, let me preach my people free. Educators were like, now let me teach my kids, right? So you had all of this going on. So anyway, so education inherently is a racist institution, right? And so what happens nowadays, black and brown kids are told they speak wrong, right? They're told they learn wrong. right? Which is ridiculous, right? It's incredibly ridiculous, right? And so I'm someone grew up in DC. I speak the way that I speak. I was also at one point I left DC and was educated in PG County, where most of my teachers were white, and I was told that I speak wrong and I act wrong. And so at that point,
Let
I
me
literally
pause you.
began.
Let me
Go
pause
ahead,
you.
go ahead,
Let me pause you.
do it,
Let me
because
just
I have
say,
a lot to say.
you
I'm sorry.
just
I'll
gave
stop at the 5 elements.
no. Yeah, I want you to
Oh,
keep going. I just want to say, let me just have a moment of inhaling, because you just gave a lesson that I don't think
Listen, I was over
people.
here, amen. I was trying not to wild out because I'm like, he hitting all the points. He talking about all the right people. He mentioning all the moments.
Yeah,
I was over
I
here, I'm
think,
like,
right.
chill me.
yo, Brennan, I was watching your face, and again, I was like, okay, I must be on to something because he said, like, my bad. Go ahead, Pastor. Go ahead. I'm listening,
Absolutely.
Pastor.
Yeah, no, because right, like, there's a moment that you have to kind of let people breathe and just go, take it
I
in for a
appreciate that.
second. You know what I'm saying? I think you just gave a whole background that helps people to understand um, where we came from, why we've been
Yes,
labeled the way we've been labeled, why we're treated
yes,
the way we're treated, and
yes.
you laid out the foundations of it was never expected for us to rise above a certain place, right? Like, it
No,
was
never.
never expected. And so when we throw these labels on hip hop, that's why we're doing this program. So
It's
people,
the
when they start
same
to
thing. It's the
understand,
same cycle.
Exactly, Brennan.
with
Exactly.
if
It's the same
you know what I'm
cycle.
saying? So it's just important for us to understand, right? Like, if we continue to label hip hop the way we do, we're only downing our own people from embracing who we really are and considering. So it's just that moment. And I want to give a shout out to a couple folks that have hopped in. I know that Joyful on YouTube has said call and response is also important in the go-go language. So those of
That's
us in
right.
DC, and
Right,
Brendan has come up, so he understands what go-go is. Uh,
bro.
um, Pat, Pastor,
Greatness.
I think this might be Pastor Murray, but it says Murray Mobb, who is also on, and we them '70s babies that change everything. And okay, yeah, it's good. That's Pastor Murray. He's watching on YouTube. He said he just gave a history lesson, and also my grandson, who I told you, Dr. Keith hops on, little Travis
Yeah,
T2. He's on with us, and he wanted me to make sure he tell everybody. He said what's up, and he's watching. So
that's
shout out to
what's
all the
up.
folks watching.
That's what's
All
up.
right. So yeah, you've given us a history lesson. Now we're moving into education MCs. All right, let's
Yes,
go. Let's go.
moving into NMCs, moving into NMCs. And so, wow, whew, this is good stuff. So, all right, now, so I will fast forward quite a bit in some history. And so, um, when I matter of fact, I'm gonna yes, I will tell that story because that's how I got to NMCs, and that's important. So here's the thing. Um, I when we left Washington D.C., we just moved to PG County. We didn't move far. It was literally that that right over the borderline when you're in the DMV, right? And most of my teachers were white women. And I should let you all know that before I moved to Prince George's County Public Schools, I was celebrated and well loved by my black teachers in predominantly black schools. And I went to like started off school in Southeast. Like it was called Magani Elementary, right down the street from Ballou. It's closed now, but anyway. And I was like literally emceeing events when I was even like third grade, right? There would be school programs. I'd be asked to get on the mic and introduce people. So I've always been an MC, and I just want to lay that there. I've always been an MC. Now,
Okay.
when we moved to PG County, all these other kind of crazy things happened, y'all. My parents got divorced. My father became addicted to crack cocaine. He's fine. He's healed. He's recovered. He's a pastor. He's amazing preacher. I mean, anyway. But I firmly believe in acknowledging stuff early on. I was clear early on that I was a gay kid, right? I just want to say that. So long story short, I was dealing with a lot racism that I didn't know how to name in school because my teachers were labeling me a problem student. I didn't understand, but they didn't know I was stressed out. Like I had a lot, had a lot going on. I was really stressed out and poor. Oh, it was bad, right? And so I started writing poetry, right, to get my emotions out, right, to be able to express the
Mm,
conditions of my world. And some stuff I ain't
mm.
share with nobody because it wasn't, I felt like it was protected. It was for me, right? And so I just need to say that. So after that, then I discovered spoken word because I won't tell that whole history, but y'all, spoken word poetry is as old as who knows what. But I started watching something on HBO called Def Poetry Jam. It was hosted by one of my favorite MCs, Most Def, and he brought on some of the dopest people who were performing poetry. And that's when I discovered spoken word. I was like, oh, you mean to tell me the things that I'm writing on this paper, I can actually get in front of an audience and like
Mm.
and make them feel a thing.
Talk
And
that, talk it.
somebody mentioned the call and response. When enslaved African people were separated on the plantations, and they were separated by their languages, so they weren't allowed to speak with one another. So the way that they evoked emotion was they sang, right? And so there was something about in that call and response, that like that feeling, right? That's the thing that I discovered early on. Like, wait a minute, you mean if I get up on this mic and speak my truth, this might land on the people and they might feel something. Oh, that was a powerful discovery, yo. That was a powerful discovery. I then decided I'm going to be a spoken word artist and poet the rest of my life. So that led me to,
Mm.
I became my family's first college graduate. I went to University of Maryland College Park, and I was deeply involved in the poetry slam scene. I was actively involved in writing the Black campus newspaper. Like I just got heavily involved into Black literature and writing. Went on and got my master's degree from Penn State, which is it's in an area called College Student Affairs. I essentially studied how Black, brown, and marginalized students grow up in college environments. And I was hosting open mic, programs on college campuses, killing it. So here's how we get to NMCs. After multiple years, maybe about a decade or so of traveling around the world, doing some really, really dope stuff, I come back home to DC, and I start working for a lot of like youth development, nonprofit organizations, tutoring programs, after school programs. Yeah, shout out to my bio. There we go. After school programs, tutoring programs, college development programs, right? And I'm running these things and I'm having a blast. But my students would, or my young people would say, Mr. Keith, I love coming to your programs, but I don't like going to school. That to me
Mm.
signaled something, right? It was like, what is it about the conditions that I'm creating? Right? These students will wake up at 6:30 in the morning to catch the 96 bus all the way from Southeast to ride all the way uptown Northwest DC to go to like this summer program I had. They would wake up to do this. And I was like, they would do this, but they hate school. And so I decided that I had a question. So for people who are listening, if you are interested or curious about what it means to have these different kinds of degrees, because I'm about to tell you about this PhD and how I got to NMCs, a college degree, right? If you think about it as just kind of foundational knowledge, right? So if hip hop were a major, it would be to
Yeah.
teach you all in depth more of what I just shared, right? So it's the foundation. It's the thing that you need to know the most about. I tell people if you're gonna, you know, uh, 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 go to college and try to major in something, major in the thing that you want to know the most about. Don't think about the job you're going to get. Major in that. Anyway, foundational knowledge. Master's degree is mastering a practice. My master's degree is in education, right? I was like, oh, I need to master how to educate, how to teach, how to learn, how to write curriculum, how to be a leader in education. So I mastered that practice, right? Then the PhD is about discovery, y'all. It's about discovery. It means that you have a question that has not yet been answered, meaning you
This is
can't
good.
type it into Google, right? You can't type it into Google. You can't you can't figure this out. Now, I entered this PhD program with the question, why do my kids like what I'm doing, but they don't like what their schools are doing? What is it about my leadership and maybe the conditions I'm creating with my leadership that are somehow inspiring them or motivating them? Like, what's happening with this thing? So I go into this PhD program at George Mason, and I'm accepted. And I remember reading all of these leadership theories, y'all. This is real. All of these leadership theories that were talking about leaders act like this. They lead from the top down and all these weird things, but none of them seemed to reflect me. None of them. None of them reflected people who worked in communities. None of them, because I've always worked in partnership with schools. So I was a nonprofit, working with schools. I never worked in a school, but I was certainly leading things. So anyway, I'm reading all these theories. None of them sound like me, and none of them mention anybody who's a spoken word artist, a poet, a rapper, or an MC. And I'm thinking to myself, hip hop is almost 50 years old, depending on how you tell the story. I'm almost 40 years old. You mean to tell me nobody's been writing about people who embody hip hop as leadership? Like
Mm.
nobody, like that's not a thing. And so I remember asking one of my professors that question, and he was like, "Nah, I mean, I don't think hip hop education leadership has ever really been. I don't think that's a thing, Tony." And I'm like, "Well, I need to figure out a way to make that a thing." Now, because I just told y'all that hip hop is all of this culture, I can't go and study all the hip hop leaders, right? I was like, well, I want to study the ones that remind me of myself. I want to study the MCs. I want to study the people who move crowds with their rhythmic spoken words, whether it's rapping, whether it's poetry, whether it's MCing, whether it's, I want to study them. So what I wound up
But
doing,
but I,
y'all,
and I
was, oh, go ahead,
let me
outside, go
say
ahead.
this too, right? Like because there are these moments that are just rich for me. Here you are, right? We talk about the beginning of hip hop, just to frame this for folks. In the 1970s, if you talk about the
Yeah,
more the terminology, right, of hip hop and the
correct.
actual, but when we talk about, right, historically, hip hop is an element of learning and just embedded in culture. We're talking about even before the 1970s. And what you're almost saying to me is that if we think about it, there was nothing in place to teach black and brown folks
Right,
this whole time, right? Because
right.
when they stole us, when they brought us over, they weren't trying again to see us as even human beings. So it was never
Correct.
thought about. And so here you are, right? We're talking about the 2000s, and there's nothing formatted for people of color, which is why people get so upset at standardized tests, right? Which is
Yes.
why people get so upset at the traditional ways of education system, because it does not take into account that different people learn in different ways, nor does it even acknowledge
Yes.
that we are even
Yes.
human beings. So I just want to make sure we're clear with that, right? Because there are these points where we have to make sure that people who are listening understand this is why hip hop is such something to be looked at more than just rap and lyrics, um, and even just dancing, because there's an element of being able to teach people in a way that people learn, being able to see people as people, and understanding
Yes.
that and we talked a lot about this. Let me just also compare this, Brendan. I think we talked about this last week, and you kind of chimed in. But when we look at the church, then when we look at the church, the model of church,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the traditional church in America is set up off of that same system that never identified black people as people. So
Correct.
therefore, even to the church, and I right now, right, like the credentials I'm going after in the Methodist Church now. I'm not big on denominations, but let's just remember, right? So therefore, in our system, we are still dealing with an oppressed system, a system that was created to move in oppression because it never identified people of color is people at all. So I just want to make, right, there's that comparison. As we compare and contrast church, the world
Mm-hmm.
we live in, the country we live in, if hip hop, if you got to the 2000s, there was never any true way to educate people of color because we were not recognized as people, well, then the church never identified people of color as real people either. So we're set up in a whole
Mm.
system, right? And so hip hop is that area that we've thrived in because it was created by us, created for us. And so this is a
Mm-hmm.
place where the church has to embrace hip hop if it wants to
Mm.
evolve or if it wants to grow. I just want to say that. I
Mm.
just want to make sure
Ooh,
that we
Pastor, that's good
we get
stuff.
some points in there.
That's good
Yeah.
stuff. And what I
Yeah.
might, what I feel compelled to offer, if I may, with that is there's nothing wrong, by the way, people who are listening in, if your only understanding of hip hop is commercialized mainstream music, meaning the stuff that you hear on the radio, right? That is hip hop music. But please understand, right, that the only reason people associate that as hip hop is because that's the only part of hip hop that gets talked about or that gets played. So, regardless of the lyricism, the artists themselves, y'all, I assure you, there are so many more. There was, I think the word I'm looking for is balance, right? When hip hop really began to get played as music and become part of popular culture on radio, there was a bit of a balance. You had people who were sort of like more socially conscious, knowledgeable kind of MCs and rappers. You had Queen Latifah and Tribe Called Quest and all these really dope folks. But then you also had, yo, don't sleep. You had Tupac and Biggie and Ice-T, and like you had balance, right? So you could hear what was actually going on in the hood being told in the way that it was actually going on in the hood. But then you also had the liberation and the joy and the black uplift, right? That does not sell records, which are owned by media companies, which are owned by mostly white rich people, right? So that system of racism that sucks up and spits out hip hop is only giving you a smidgen of what it is. So I implore you to seek out additional like folks to listen
And
to. And I know,
I
go
think
Pastor.
I think 3J wants to say something, but I just want to say you kind of just answered a question too. Susie said, what do you think about how hip hop has changed over the years? Some of the hip hop today does not tell a story. It's just about the beat behind it. So you actually kind of hit her question without even, I think, seeing her question. 3J, what were you going to say, brother?
Yep.
No, because I was actually about to get ready to post out that question that she asked and bring it to his attention. So he kind of answered it as well. So we're on the same path. I ain't got nothing else. So go ahead.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
What y'all are making me
you
think?
spitting
Yeah, go
fire.
ahead, go ahead,
You
go ahead.
spitting fire. You spitting fire,
Yeah,
Dr. B. You spitting
you
fire.
going at it. No, I'm just sitting here
Yo,
learning. So I mean, this is good for me.
I appreciate it. And what's so crazy, y'all, is I appreciate this moment because all of this story actually leads up to an NMC. Like, for real, everything that I'm sharing with you all in this way, I had to learn for myself. I had to read over, I think it was probably like 300 something academic articles. And if y'all have never read an academic article, it is boring. Well, some of it's boring. Some people actually don't write this, but like some is because I like my academic writing. But anyway, but like some of that stuff. But I had to read and discover. Oh, that's where my black language comes from that I've been told to code switch in academia. Okay. Oh, that's where hip hop came from. Oh, and so I had to learn that knowledge so that I could teach the people in my program who were mostly white folks what hip hop was, because when I was in class talking about what it's like to be an education leader, I mean, hip hop leader in education, all they knew was a rapper. And they're like, you're a rapper. And I'm like, no, no, that's, I mean, yeah, but no, actually, no, I'm not a rapper. I'm not. You know what I mean? So having to explain all of that
Yeah.
is what brought me to this space. So I just want y'all to know, thank you for that, because it's important for me. Like a part of what drives me for real for y'all is the knowledge that I've learned in academia that should have been given to you. I just believe that God put me here to make sure that you get it. It's like a translation, right? It's like a download and translation thing, right? So I just appreciate that. Okay, so I was somewhere in my story. I think I was in
You,
NMCs.
you,
Yeah.
yep.
Got it. I had a thing in my head I was thinking about code switching in languages, but I think I'll get to that later. Anyway, and so I'm in this program, and I was like, you know what? I think I have a question. I want to know, what is hip hop education leadership? Like, what is it? And I want to know, what is language to describe people like me, hip hop education leaders, like people who embody hip hop in their decision making, but who in education, but who also, like, I've spoken with artists and poets. Like, I just want to know, right? So I interviewed people who were just like me, y'all, because I'm not the only one. Most of the people on this call, and probably other people who are listening, all, probably embody the same kinds of things. And so I interviewed 10 people who worked as community partners, like school, like me, inside of high schools around the country: San Francisco, several of them in DC, New York, Philadelphia. No, not Philly. I had Detroit in there, New Jersey. Anyway, Manchester, Connecticut. And I just simply asked them to tell me their story. Like, yo, can you just start from the beginning? How did you grow up? And how did you become to be somebody who works in schools doing this work? Oh, I think I
No, keep
lost
going,
them.
keep going,
Oh,
keep
anyway.
going, keep
Okay,
going.
got it. Okay, I'm sorry. How did you get to do this work? And what do kind of what do you tell people that you call yourselves? And it was interesting because all of them that I interviewed were like, well, I usually tell people that I am kind of what my title is. So I'm the director of programs at this nonprofit, or I'm the program assistant at this, as opposed to saying like what it is that they actually do. Like who are they, right, professionally? And so interviewed them, and this is where innovation comes in, and this is where, y'all, understanding who you are and where you come from, and realizing that your language and your way of understanding the world is also linked to African origins. I was like, yo, when I had this transcript with all of these people's stories, and y'all, they were long. I mean, we're talking like 14 pages of single space transcripts for 10 different people, right? It was a lot of words on paper. I'm looking at all these words of this interview, and I'm like, this is a lot of data. How am I going to find answers to my question in all of this? And I was like, I need to find a way to visually make this data, which is the told stories on the paper, look more like hip hop, or more like the way I understand the world. And my African centered brain was like, bruh, you want to make this look like poetry. I just kept telling myself over and over that. And when I would tell the people in my PhD program, they're like, Tony, I don't know. I don't think that's really scholarly. I mean, hip hop, they were just learning that hip hop was more than rap music. And here I come, like, I want to turn stories into poems. They're just like, what? So I did it. And so what I wound up doing was this method that I created, y'all. And this is rooted in like Black ways of thinking, or at least mine. And if y'all have never seen or heard of something called blackout poetry before, it's when you take text that's already been created. It could be a page out of a book, it could be a magazine article, it could be a newspaper, website, whatever. And you
And this is where you talk
circle
about blackout poetic
black
transcription,
up,
right?
yeah, on my website. Correct. And
Yeah.
so, thank you for that, Pastor. Yes, that's what that is. And so, yeah, because y'all can see on my website visually what I'm talking about. And so, what you do with blackout poetry usually is if there's text that's already been created, you will usually highlight like several words that matter to you, and you'll black out all the other words around it, and what's left over in kind of the visible spaces is kind of a poem. Well, the difference is I was a researcher, and I didn't want to turn these people's told stories into poems. That wasn't my job. It's not my job to take their stories and manipulate them and make them pretty based on my own assumptions. That's not fair. And so I was like, well, I don't want to change anything about what they said. So I just started blacking out words that didn't matter, like it and the, you know what I'm saying? Like just kind of filler words and sometimes repeated words, and left over in those spaces were these texts that structured like poems. And I'm like, oh, I've done it. Right. And so that thing is called blackout poetic transcription. That's a methodology. That's an actual research methodology that people can use to reduce text to look like poems. So the next thing that I did was when I was reading over these poems, I was like, oh, these are so dope. And I started categorizing them and giving them names. And I had a young person. He's actually a rapper in DC. He goes by the name of Lil Marley. I should look him up. Dude is fire.
Okay.
Lil Marley, Lulmarley, Lil Marley. He was a student in a college prep program that I used to run for DC Public School back in the day. He's grown now, but anyway, I was like, yo, can you do me a favor and look at these? I'm calling these things data poems. They look like poems, but they're not. They're structured like it. Can you read some of these and just tell me what you see or what you think? And he was like, yo, Mr. Keith, these people who told you these stories or these poems, they're dropping jewels. He's like, these are gems. These are just like, there's stuff in there that, oh man, that resonated with me. And what I realized was because he and I are different people, what resonated with him didn't resonate with me because he had different questions. The question that I had was, what's language to describe people like me? What do we do for schools and education, right? Why is spoken word poetry a part of our life? So I looked for jewels in those data poems. And one of the jewels became one of the person that I was interviewing. He had said something like, if you think about it, MCs are like educators, literally the M and the C, something like that. And I was like, MCs, educators, bam! And it just hit me. Educational MCs was the language, right? So it was like, oh, I'm a hip hop education
Mm,
leader, but I'm an educational
okay.
MC. I master conditions in education through rhythmic
That's tight.
spoken words. That's what I do, right? And so
That's
that
crazy.
That's tough.
became
That's
language.
tough.
Yeah,
That's
that
tough.
became language. Thank you. And so the dope part about that, y'all, is that now is language that for me has built my career, but it's also language that for real, for anybody can use. Like I don't own it. There's no test if you're an MC or not. Like if you feel like you embody hip hop and your way of being in leadership, and you a spoken word artist and a poet, a rapper, MC, feel free to be like, yo, I'm an MC all day. It's fine, right? So
I,
the other thing that I'll just offer is like and I'll stop here, I promise, because I just want you all to know there's opportunities for a thing, because I believe that there's something. People who got questions about hip hop education leaders who are DJs is a different question. People who got questions about hip hop education leaders who are breakdancers is a different question. So just know that there's opportunities to develop more language to describe folks like you, Pastor, and others who embody hip hop in your spiritual way of being. That's the question.
yeah,
Peace out.
I'm listening to you, man. No, it's listen.
I
Again,
love
I'm trying to.
education right now. It's deep right now. Woo!
I, I'm trying to breathe because you just gave a whole history lesson that welcome back, brother Brennan.
Hey,
That like I just okay. So let me just give a shout out to a few people, man. Like
It's hot.
my
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm listening. I'm getting some
my
water because
sis.
it is hot. I'm still here with y'all, I promise.
Yo, it's cool. My sister Sheila Dent says loving all of this. She's a minister and Jordan's mom, 3J, and joyful. So over at Chumsey, thanks for tuning in. Capitol Hill United Methodist Church, giving a shout out to them.
That's what's up.
And then Ruth Jones says that's good. Wow, like blah, like I'm in spiritual intake overload at this moment. But
But here's the
that's
thing, you know
Now you
what's? I'm
be
sorry, I
feeling
just have
how
to
I be
say,
feeling, bro. Now you
I
understand. And I was here. I was listening on my phone the whole time. I was dealing with some
wow.
Wi-Fi issues and laptop going crazy, but I was on the phone listening like, yo, he do it like this is the all right.
And thank you. And this is hip
I
hop. This is the thing that we need to work to know that this is hip hop. This embodiment of the thing is hip hop. Like that's what it is. It's not just the music. It's this. I'm sorry.
and if people are watching, I want y'all to listen. I keep saying it. Share this as much as you can. To me, and let me say this: the reason why that resonates so much with me is because, and Brendan and 3J totally understand this. I think because they're really helping me out with this. But
Because we
when
said
I
all
came
the
up with
language last week.
we
Yeah,
did, we
right,
did, we
right.
did.
We were here
But
last week.
He wasn't even on, but we said a lot of this last week, so it's like
Right,
you
right,
know
right.
good.
it's confirmation, but I think also right, like the way you said it, sort of sums it up in a way that we weren't able to last week. And I think
Mm,
the well was built off of the same kind of model, right? For me,
mm,
the well, so for people who might be watching and don't understand this format of church, which we call the unchurched church, it was because I kept looking around at the church, the institutional church. And let me make that
mm,
clear, because many folks say, "Well, there's nothing wrong with the church. You always talk about the church." I'm not always talking about the people of God, but I am talking about the entities, the institutions, the buildings,
the
and the
conditions.
policies, the traditions and the policies, right? And
Thank you
so,
for that clarification for them too.
The culture.
of course, right, and and
Yes,
and
the
and,
culture, the
Culture of
and
conditions.
church.
the
Yep.
the culture and the issue has been, it's not that that does not work for some people, but it does
Mm,
not work for all people. And so what we find is people get more caught up in the traditions and the policies of church and don't get caught into and the relationship with God. Um, uh-oh. I think I froze.
I hear you.
Can you guys, are you guys
I
still
can hear
with
you.
me?
Yeah.
That was everybody, or that was just me?
It was me.
No, I think that might be him.
I think
Oh, there you go.
everybody
You're
got.
back.
You back?
All
All
right,
right, we back. Everybody back.
Okay.
let's
Let me let, let me give you the old people say the devil trying to stop me. but for me, right, the well was this avenue of, it's not about, because we can practice the same format. Everybody says, oh, but church has to be this. It has to look like this. It has to sound like this. I need a preacher. I need a preacher preaching to me. I need a preacher speaking to me. I need a choir. And what we miss is that Jesus moved in so many different ways to have church, right? That was the conversation piece, the dialogue piece, which 3J kind of coined last week. Um, there is the music, but there's also the poetry, right? We talk about, when we look at
Mm,
Psalms, there's a whole book of Psalms that is poetic, where David talks in Psalms. When we look at Jesus and he talks in parables, I always say Jesus was the first hip hop rapper, because he spoke to people in metaphorically and in parables in ways that you had to really listen to understand, which to me is what rapping is. If you look at David, who
mm.
I think David was a break dancer, because David danced so hard he came out of his clothes, right? And so I think Pastor Tommy and I talked about that. I mean, you don't just dance to a soft song and come up out of your clothes. You are moving
Mm,
to tear your clothes.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? And so when we
Got
look
mm,
to.
at
Yeah.
the history of church, right, we got to be cognizant of the thought that church does not come in one way. Jesus does not teach and preach in one way, right? And so we have to open our
talk that.
minds just as much as we're going, well, hip hop, when we think about the Julian, how did you put it last week? You talked about the people who were not folks who were frowned upon, folks who were not well off, right? The marginalized people. When we look at the way that the Bible talks about Jesus coming back for them and talking specifically to them, that is what hip hop does in its own right, right? Like hip hop speaks to the
mm,
marginalized folks, and it was the folks who had to
mm-hmm.
come up with their own language. It was the folks who still had to have hope and who had to see dreams and to have visions to move forward, but couldn't understand all the ways that this English model, this European model was built, because it wasn't built with them in mind. And so
Bro, but I think
today's society wasn't.
it's even deeper than that for me, because I mean, and like I referenced last week, when we think about how Harriet Tubman used the system that was given, the religious system that was given to the slaves to free her people, like she put it in song. The song "Wade in the Water" was literally filled with metaphors and
Yes.
messages of how to make
That's
it.
where I was going
And
to go. I
so
got to
it's
write my
like
point down. How did I
when
get it?
you I mean, but that's the moment, man. It's like when you take, like, it's literally like the ingenuity and the intelligence and the creativity of Black people to take whatever you give us to make sure that we make it. Like, it don't, and that's what hip
Yes.
hop is. Hip hop took like whatever was left in our community to make a culture that is beautiful and edifying to us. Now, like he said, there's balance. There's some of it that might not edify you, but like at the same time, it's still built and it's ours. It's something that can't be taken away
Yes.
from them. It's something that is authentic and real. And it's like it is. It makes me sad to see like some churches not even like, I mean, to not embrace hip hop, or not even to look at it as an art form from Black culture, and
Mm-hmm.
to degrade it, even though that it is an art form from Black culture. It's built by Black people, and it's like if the European church never accepts it, the Black church has to.
That's
Like, we
crazy.
have to, because it's us. It's our skin. Like you said, it's built in us. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
storytelling. It's just to a different style of beat. And I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
even if
Ooh,
you take
ooh.
that sampling, like, I mean, it's sampling
Mm-hmm.
is, it's like you take that same beat and just flip it a little bit, and then you put new words over it. Like, it's the same thing. It's just an evolution. And like, either we are going to evolve, or, fam, you know, we'll join you at your funeral.
Whew. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
so many things that I
Talk
think
that, Brennan.
about.
Talk that.
If
Talk
I
that.
can,
Go,
if I
Dr. Keith, I
can,
saw you. You were about to say a couple of things.
cause,
I think one of the
cause,
moments I saw you light up was when somebody said something about Negro spirituals was a code language between the slaves. I saw you light up on that.
yes. Ooh, and
Wade
then
in the
Brennan
water,
took me
bro.
to a
What
whole new
about,
place.
like,
So
it's
there's two
just
things that I'm thinking about. Yeah, there are two things. So the first thing I'm thinking about is like, my gosh, Brennan, you just dropped so many gems just now. But the thing that I'm thinking about is, yes, right? Without a doubt, embedded, hidden in the coded languages. There's feedback that I'm getting. That sounds weird.
I think 3J, if you can mute your
Oh, there we go. Sorry about okay. But so what I think about is, yes, hip hop is coded language for the streets, and enslaved Africans were speaking in code through music on the plantations. But you know what they were also doing? They were mumbling so that slave masters couldn't hear them. And I'm crystal clear that I'm a part of a generation where I don't listen to contemporary rap music. I know mumble rap is a thing, but I'm like, there's potential. There is potential to hide coded messages and I don't want to call it mumble rap, but contemporary rap. I mean, there's an opportunity there because not everybody
You're
can
right.
hear the messages in there.
They're there. Trust me, they're there. The mobile rappers. That message is there. It's clear to the ones that understand it. So it's there. So you're right.
And
Good.
I
That's
think
what I'm
that's
talking about.
that doubles back to our conversation last week about looking past just the face value words, and looking for the deeper concept, the deeper meaning of what's being said. And also, if I have a problem with what's being said, my problem isn't with the person that's saying it or even what's being said. My problem should be what caused them to be in the situation to be able to tell this story.
To
I have a
testify.
question. I have a question for you guys. Man, let me tell you. So if you're watching again, you're a part of the encounter, the well encounter. I want you to like this. I want you to go like Amplify Network. I want you to like Encounter the Well, but most importantly, I want you to share this, because this is knowledge that I think so many people can benefit from. Please share this on your pages, share it with your groups, share it through text. I want to give a shout out to my grandson, because on YouTube I have seen about 10 folk say from T2, which means I don't know if he's logged in on every single page he got, or if he done had his whole group of folks log in for pop up. But T2, you
That's
the
what's
real
That's
up.
awesome.
MVP, because it's tons of people that I done seen say from T2. So what's up to everybody on YouTube? What's up to, and listen, I want y'all to know
Shout out T2.
they are all,
That's what
that's
T2.
it.
We see
They are,
y'all.
they are,
Nephew.
I think they're all gamers and
They
elementary
lit.
and
They
middle
lit right
school
now.
students that they are lighting it
Oh,
up. So I'm like, yo, it's crazy, and I
this is the
love it
joy.
because this is
This
the
is
kind of
joy.
conversation that I want them to be a part of. So shout out to all of you all. Um, Also, all the folks who took any offense by me saying, old folks, let me change it. I'm gonna be more politically correct because I get in trouble every week. Dr. Keith, every week I get in trouble for this, man. To our seasoned saints, to the folks who are seasoned with knowledge and are seasoned with the wealth of
Listen,
understanding and wisdom, I give a shout out
listen.
to you because you are the people that are
In
leading
honor,
the
in
way.
honor of hip hop, in honor of hip hop, we just gonna say they old, man. That's real. You know, like it's like, we there. Nah, that's all funny games. I
and,
love,
and,
and
and let me
absolutely
just say
respect
this
our
too.
elders.
To my godson who's on T2's father, he says they're all hackers.
That's awesome.
That's that new generation.
Yep. Yo, that's
Yep.
one thing. Yo, the other thing that's super dope is if you think about, because Brennan, you were hitting on this, is the innovation that comes out of hip hop when there are almost like no resources available, right? So when we
Mhm.
think about the history of hip hop, we can go all the way back to like the ways in which this amazing cat, Grandmaster Flash, found equipment in a junkyard and made his own like turntables, right? But that notion of we will find something and add and innovate is also linked to like African ways of being, right? Like there's this I want to say, I don't want to generalize here because Africa is a whole continent. Let's be crystal clear, right? But there are certain parts of the continent, certain countries where folks are like, yo, African people, we borrow and add. Like we take something and we just keep adding on it and then it becomes a new thing. Hip hop is exactly like that, right? And when I
Like
That's
think
good.
about,
seasoning.
That's good.
yeah, and when I think about what you all are doing right now, like this is that borrow add of hip hop. What I'm doing, I believe, is rooted in that knowledge of self. It's that evolution of that. It's that borrow and add, you know what I mean? Like that is embedded in our practice and who we are. So anyway, I just had to drop that because Brennan, you wanted something, brother.
Yeah. So let me ask this question, guys. I want to ask this question. So here's my question: if hip hop is so revolutionary, why is then hip hop so controversial?
Because it's revolutionary. That's
They don't understand it.
like, hey, bro.
But it's
I
also
mean,
it's also controversial to who?
right.
Mm, mm,
It's
yeah.
controversial. It's
Yeah.
controversial to the people that don't understand. So that I think that's the best way to answer that. It's controversial to the people that don't understand hip hop, that don't listen to hip hop like that, that don't even want to embrace hip hop, the culture. Let's say it like that. Let's just say the culture. They don't want to embrace the culture nor understand the culture. So that's why it's such a what you said.
Controversial.
I think, yeah, and I think
That
that
word.
the controversy comes from, like, I think I think Dr. Keith, you kind of talked about it earlier. Like, we weren't supposed to be here. Hip hop isn't supposed to be here. Hip hop isn't supposed to be this dominant culture. It came from nothing. And, like the instruments went uptown and there were no instruments in the community anymore because they were playing for, the Hasididi clubs and all they had was records. And so like it came from that. It built itself from nothing. And so like when you're the underdog, you aren't always accepted. And it's controversial because you're not supposed to be here, period. So like that alone, and the fact that hip hop has gone from not supposed to be here to being the dominant force everywhere, like that is mind blowing for people, and it's hard for people to accept that because hip hop has, like, I mean, like it's the little kid that on the part that you don't believe is going to be like the NFL running back that turns around and comes as like, sets records, and you're just like, where did this kid come from? He's such a rabbit. But if you don't jump on that train and if you aren't accepting of that person, then that person can, like, that little kid is going to turn into something great. It's like if you don't jump on that train with them, then when they turn into something great, he's like, oh, all I remember is way back when they were the little tyke on the Pee Wee team that couldn't make a tackle. But now this person has progressed into this, and yeah, it's going to be controversial because you didn't see it happening, and that's why. because people don't have that foresight to see like where hip hop came from and how it made it to where it is.
Yeah, I think both of you all are
Um,
without a doubt speaking so much to just the notion of how do people gain access to knowledge about hip hop culture, right? Because I think that that's the key thing, right? Because I you know what I mean? Like I think they know, right? Unless they have a question, then they're satisfied. And I just kind of feel like the more we have these kinds of conversations that makes this knowledge accessible to people, the more likely we are to probably start to see a bit more balance in the narrative about what's being shared about hip hop. So I just want to say that I believe that we are entering a space of possibility right now, right? And given the virtual environment, this joint is shared across the, all the multiple networks, free knowledge. So if people want to know about the history of hip hop and the different ways you can talk about hip hop philosophically and spiritually, think about that. We're having a spiritual philosophical conversation about hip
yeah,
hop, and
yeah,
we ain't
yeah, yeah,
mentioned,
yeah.
and we haven't mentioned a single like rapper or a lyric. You know what I mean? Like think about that.
Wow, wow, wow. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. I'm having my Oprah Winfrey moment. That's good. That's good. Like, but that's deep. That you man, look, Dr. Keith. I think my grandson said it best. He said, Dr. Keith, you're good. Listen, you are.
Thank you.
There are these moments that we do have to breathe on though, and I think that's a quick moment to breathe on. We just talked about hip hop, and we have not, in the greatest way, we have not really talked about rapping or rappers. We've talked
The
about a
art form of
culture,
rap. We
the
haven't even
art.
talked about the art form of putting words together and how you put in a metaphor and how you can put in a triple entendre and all the English, like for everything that people hate it for. How many of the like most famous English language like similes, metaphors, entendres, imagery, all of that is in hip hop. This thing that they hate so much, it is so revered that the dopest lyricists do it. Like it's mind blowing.
And let me say this, man. Let me say this. I just had some conundrum, but and let me give two things. Two things. One, yes, Dr. Sheila, Miss Sheila Dent says creativity is spiritual, right? Creativity is spiritual, and I want to go back. There's two things I want to say. 3J said last week. He said, and Dr. Keith, I think you'll love this, but he said, right, hip hop is a spiritual gift. Rapping is a spiritual gift. And we as people, not just the church, we as people have to begin to wrestle with hip hop, and especially the flow of hip hop, the dancing of hip hop, the culture of hip hop is a spiritual gift because we don't always look at it through that lens. But let me say this too. The other piece that I'm sort of thinking, to all my folks who keep saying, I want to help shed some light. There are a lot of folks who keep saying, yeah, I like hip hop or I can embrace hip hop, but what about the cursing? But what about the negativity? But what about this type of hip hop? But what about the hip hop that exploits? Let me say this, right? Y'all ready? Let me just point the kitchen. Especially my folks of color. I want to have a quick. What you're doing when you do that is you are emulating the same folks who are not a part of the black and brown culture who go, well, black people are good, but what about the ones who keep shooting people?
Thank
But
you. Thank
what
you.
about the people who are robbing people in the street? Just as much as you hate having to go to work and go to church and go live your life in a community, and folks go, "You're a good black one, right? You're a pretty black girl. You're pretty for a brown skin. You're nice for a gay. You speak well for the same people who hate that narrative. You cannot do the same thing to our own culture of hip hop because when you say, but what about those who are doing, and what about mumble rap, and what about you were doing the same thing? You were
How
pointing
many
out.
times we're gonna have to
You
keep
know, I'm
coming
done.
back to this song? We're gonna keep coming back to this song. Y'all gonna listen to this song. J. Cole, High for
Nah,
Hour. Remember the song.
Which one is it?
What good is taking over what good is taking over when we know what you're gonna do. The only real revolution happens right inside of you.
Out of you.
You gotta start with self. And but that's like hip hop. That one of those five elements. Knowledge
That's
of
right.
self. Like
That's right.
you have to start with you, and it's gonna come out, and whatever comes out is you. And so love that
Yes.
and be that. And like
Yes.
even if it's
Yes.
not hip hop, even if it turns out to where what comes out of it is I don't like hip hop. Hip hop is cool with that.
Yep.
Like we're not gonna make you like hip hop. Go find what you love. But we
Yes.
love this.
Brennan. if I may, brother, gosh, you are hitting on so many gems, and every time you speak, there's like a thought that triggers in my brain. And the thing that I thought about is one
Because
thing
it's
that
well, it's
I
two
would
dope
love.
people.
That's probably what it is. We all dope for real, for real. But like what I keep thinking so much about is like, yo, dang, I lost my thought. As soon as you gave me the affirmation, it flew out the door.
Sorry.
Give me a second. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It was
No, but I mean, somebody just commented and was like, sometimes cursing is the only way to express the
oh,
situation, and
now I
it's
got
like
you.
that's the real, bro. Like
Yeah.
sometimes if I'm in a situation, it's only a few words that can really describe where I'm at, and
Yeah.
the part of that is there's only a few words that I've learned to associate with these situations. And so
Mm-hmm.
then it goes into again, are you mad about the word? Or like if you're mad about the word, be mad about the situation that put me in like to use that word.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that's the and
Facts. Facts.
you gotta go
Mm-hmm.
deeper than just I don't
Mm-hmm.
like it because it's
Mm-hmm.
cussing.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't like
Mm-hmm.
it because
And
of content. Like what puts them there to be able to tell that story? You can't relate to it.
exactly.
Why? And you can't.
Exactly. And when you think about the nature of words and the history of what's considered bad and what's good, and you know what I mean, like just and the structures around that, it's really interesting. I call it like the politics of profanity. It's sort of like, I just wish that more people would just accept the fact that all of us are incredibly complicated, multi-dimensional people. We are wildly complicated. I'm not always a nice guy. You know what I mean? Like, come on. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I am a jerk. You know what I mean? And so, but I just think that when we think about people, and if we are multidimensional, complicated, multiple intelligent, multilinguistic people, of course hip hop is going to be wildly complicated and of course it's going to be, which is why, and now I can mention an actual like rapper, because I think this is probably like the easy kind of go-to, because I think it's probably the most relevant rapper that I think most people can associate with. But I use Tupac all the time, right? To be clear, a brilliant poet before he was a rapper. Let's be clear, first of all. Anyway, but like this brother, without a doubt, was wildly complicated in his lyricism. We know this to be true. He'll rap about violence and materialism and misogyny and all that, but then he'll also rap about, Brenda having a baby on the bathroom floor. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
because our lives are complicated, right?
mm.
That's why hip hop is so complicated. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of what side of hip hop people are only choosing to see, and what knowledge they have access to even understand more about hip hop, to see another perspective. And there's so many artists out here like that right now. So, especially women MCs. Don't get me started.
And I think it's
Um,
man, yeah, go ahead.
I
Go ahead.
I just want to, because we're getting close to that time. Listen, I hate. I
Ah,
just, Jackie, if I hope we can have 15 minutes. 15 minutes. I know, like this. There's so much
nah.
packed into this, but I want to pause because there's a question. Let me say this. Right? Again, the will is built on not necessarily preaching to people and not about trying to just change people's minds. We are all individuals and we all come to different things with different understandings and do different lens. But what I think is always important for the church to do, or for people to do, is to be able to ask the right questions that help people to dig deep and do the soul searching of their own. If
Mhm.
Here's what I said to somebody, listen, when you identify a church of your choosing, when you're old enough to do that, you go to church in a place you feel comfortable most of the time. You go to a church that usually identifies with your own thoughts, identifies with your own values, identifies with your own morals, right? That's why black people don't always go to a white conservative church. That's also why white folks don't go to a good gospel, gospel-led church. That's why, and when I say gospel, I mean gospel music. That's why, right? Some people prefer more spiritual, quiet service. Some people prefer loud. That's okay, but here's what I want the well to represent. The well, I think, represents that place that you can dig deep. That's why it's called the well, and it's about trying to hit all the points, all those places. We want you to feel comfortable enough to come in and be authentic, but we also want to be able to push
So
you
you
and
want
motivate you and influence you to ask the real questions that lead you to do the deep dig internally and ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe? Why am I comfortable with this? Why am I more? Why do I relate to this more? Why do these people make me feel more comfortable? You have to ask yourself that question if you want to grow, and so that's what we're about. And so I'm framing a question that was up. Susie says, "But you said earlier it's about selling records. How much if it's just to sell records and not their own truth or story?" And I just kind of wanted to put that out there to see if Dr. Keith, you wanted to maybe address that.
Got it. It's about selling records. How much if it is to? Ooh, I'm sorry. I think that. So I just need the question one more time. I feel like I missed it.
But you said earlier it's about selling records. How much? How much if it
How
is
much of
just
it?
to sell
How much of it
records?
is just to sell records and
Records.
not their
Thank you.
own true
Their
stories?
own
Yeah.
truth.
Oh, got it. That is a wonderful question, and I think
See, now
that
we get into commercial versus, what I
that's what I was
mean,
about
the
to say.
real.
Yeah, and I think for real, that might be a place where we put a pin in. But because here's the thing, what I don't know is the industry, right? You know what I mean? I don't know what happens, and I'm crystal clear. I stay in my lane, boop, right? But what I believe happens is there are probably tons of people, and again, we're talking about hip hop using the mainstream narrative that it's just rap music, right? Let's just go with that's the way we're thinking about this,
Right.
right? I would imagine every MC or every rapper that gets a deal most likely is probably started by telling a true story, right? And I would imagine they got in a room full of lots of people that showed them a lot of money and made this big promise, right? And then it was sort of, yo, let's just adjust what you're saying. Let's make it a little bit more violent. Let's just make it a little bit more, because you'll sell more records, right? And to be
It's
crystal clear,
happened.
y'all, white
It's
people,
happened a bunch of
right?
times. That
It is.
happens
And
in
to
the
be crystal
industry,
clear,
and
y'all,
it's more. I mean, you can hear it from even the artists. They'll talk about how Wale is one of the artists that I love, and he talks about it all the time.
yeah,
Like the art, the art that he would submit to the label to be his album, they would reject it and say, "No, we need this, or we need the hit single,
exactly,
or we need
exactly.
or we need this type of content because this is pushing the culture." And it's like that's when, like, in some artists, they're okay with that, and they will switch and they will make
Exactly.
that adjustment, and then they'll release that record, and you'll see like Nas last year he did the album with Kanye. 2 weeks after that he released the Soul Tape 2. You feel me? So it's
Yep.
like he knew one of these is commercial, but these is for my people. Like I had to do that for the
Exactly.
business. This is the real. And so it's like
Exactly.
that's where it comes into, like, yeah, absolutely, the business has and capitalism has taken, just like it has done any art form, and there are ways to get in there and make it something that is not. But the true art of hip hop, and even like the best artists, the most famous artists, Kendrick, Cole, even
Yeah.
Drake, like those, they spit the real. And even Drake, like, you don't hear a bunch of gun and references and gang references from Drake. He the certified lover boy. You're gonna hear a love track on probably 6 of the 13 tracks you're gonna hear from him, because that's him.
Facts.
You feel me? And that's his
Facts.
life, and that's what he's living. It's not like, and that's the thing we have to realize. And again, it drives back to that content. Even if the content drives you to sell records, why is that happening? And why is that
Mm-hmm.
content being pushed more than the real content and the authentic
Mm-hmm.
content that would have been released
Mm-hmm.
on the mixtape that comes after? You feel me?
And
Exactly.
this is where again, because somebody asked a question to me about the European church. Um, okay, so much is going on. Let me just go back real quick. Pastor Tommy Murray said when we were talking about curse words, he said, "Don't be mad at the word. Be mad about the situation that made us use the word." I'm going to say that if I curse in my sermon on Sunday.
You get an amen corner from us, man.
Listen, and we be the only four there. Amen, Pastor.
Hey
Like,
man, talk.
I want to say this. Somebody asked me the question about European church, and I do want to say, for those who might have missed the very beginning, Dr. Keith did a very good job of really sort of paving the way for the platform of this conversation. But um, when we talk about the European church and when we talk about the European influence, we have to remember, right? Like this country, which was already discovered by Native Americans, it was a European culture that came over and quote unquote rediscovered it. And so at that point, right, like we are brought into this place where they begin to dictate how things move, how things flow, what should be right and what should be wrong. I think even Brennan talked about last week when we talk about curse words, right? Curse words are something that came out of a German, a German dialect that the Europeans said we don't want that language, and so they deemed certain curse words to be curse
The
words,
church,
right? It
the
it
church
it
did it. The church
Knowledge.
did it.
the
Let's be
church
clear. The
the
church
Knowledge.
church.
did it.
You're right. I'm right. Oh,
Knowledge.
you're right. You're right. The church did that, and so everything, and when we talk about even so much of what we identify as our culture in this country comes from this place of the English settlers and their dominance and what they
A conqueror.
chose is to be right or wrong. And so that's where, when I talk about the European church model, that's what I'm talking about, and that's the place we live. And even as Dr. Keefe sort of said earlier, we as a people, those of us who were not a part of that dominant culture, had to find ways for us to live and experience life and to speak truth into our situations. And so even in the church, that is the place where we have not accepted
Mm.
or embraced our own, right? We fight against our own culture because even that is embedded in us, right? Again, I want to go back to the model I think I used before when we look at straightening our hair. There's a part of us that that has not yet grown to the place where we go, oh, those are beautiful naps. That's a beautiful coarse hair, right? That's that because we don't embrace our own culture. So then everything, it used to be the saying was white is right. The more white you were, the more right you were, right? And that's a headspace that they have put us in. Let me touch, just move ahead a little bit, and let me touch a question that I posed to you all that I think I could actually answer a little bit myself, being in the industry. There's even a place in the industry when we begin to speak our own dialects and talk our own languages, as we see in hip hop or we see in the black church, the white narrative sometimes gets a little envious and jealous of that, and they don't like for us to have our own power, our ways. We see that in what happened at the Capitol last week. Let's be real, right? There's a culture that does not want us to rise or to own our own or to be our own people. And so when that happens, they try to either shut us down or they try to create their own sort of evolution so that it becomes theirs. They can take ownership of it. So when you ask the question, Susie, about like even the recording industry, because we as black people have not owned our own language and our own culture of hip hop, there is a culture, the dominating culture, that wants to own it and will gladly take it from us. And then they begin to present it the way they want. They package it the way they want to package it. So there are tons of hip hop artists that come in and they're talking about, you know, freedom songs, and they're doing songs about justice, and they're doing songs about love. But the industry, which is controlled mostly by that white narrative, that European narrative, they're going, nah, that's not what's gonna make us money. And we're not really trying to liberate y'all. We're trying to control y'all. So put this out instead. Put this out. Let's talk about drugs and let's talk about sex. Let's make you all sex figures. Let's demasculate. That's what's that word? Um, let's take away the masculinity of the black
Sexualize?
man.
Oh,
Let's
emasculate.
sexualize, right? Let's emasculate. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's emasculate the black man. Let's over sexualize the black woman. And then they begin to control the nature. And guess what that does? It creates that narrative of black folks that say, "Oh, that's hip hop's way too much. Hip hop is doing." They are yet again they're trying to control and manipulate your minds into what you perceive. And so, what do? You hop right on the bandwagon, not even knowing it, blindly following this
Yeah.
right. Like that's the place where they try to manipulate us and take what we have and make it their own. It
Yep.
is all a part of
Yep.
that dominating culture that does not want you to live in your truth.
And
Yep.
it's
And Pastor, if
crazy.
I may offer,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
just I want to like a historical thing, just because I just love history, right? What you were just saying, Pastor, is making me think so much about. It's weird. I was just thinking just now about. All right, I'm thinking about Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, all this movement that we're seeing with especially Black and brown female sexuality in hip hop music, right? So I think about what's happening right now with that. And by the way, I'm celebrating that. I'm like, yo, tell your stories, own your bodies, Black women, do your thing, right? But then also and I think about historically when we think about women MCs like Salt and Pepper, right? These women were talking about women embracing their sexuality. TLC
Yeah,
and Left Eye,
TLC.
they were
Yeah,
doing this with yeah. So my point is, hip hop has always been a space where people are expressing their truths, right? But to your point, when capitalism gets involved, when money gets involved, then the narrative switches, right? It's an interesting, an unfortunate sort of
I got a
mechanism at
perfect
play here. It's a
example.
little lever. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
A perfect example. Like, I mean, and this is, it was one of the saddest things that, ended 2020, but MF Doom with his passing, his career, MF Doom's career was built independent before independent was the thing to do. And he didn't
Mm.
move with the industry because he saw the industry, he saw what the industry was trying to do and what they were trying to do to his art. So he controlled his art, but now you have to think how unsupported he was in doing what he did. Even though as far as talent, creativity, artistic, like and putting the work in, creating the album, doing like his artwork, he did TV shows and things like that. He did all of this in spite of not being supported by the system because the system didn't support him taking his own ownership of his art.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like
I
when you look at it, is and that's where is that question of what's for records and what's for the real. It's like absolutely, like for some people, like for MF Doom, he did it and he did it his way, and he is good. His family is good, but for other people, it's like sometimes they're in a situation where if I don't write this record the way they want it, my family might not eat, and this is how I support my family. And so that's the other part we got to think about, and that's the part is like
right,
it's not just we can control the content, and that was the situation Wale was in. He was like, I
right.
can't make money in this culture if I don't follow what this label is telling me right now. If I don't give them the music that they want, and so it's in the system, and it puts artists in a situation where leveraging my true love for my art and what I put out versus providing for my family. And like it's a struggle, but like again, have a problem with what put them in that situation.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw us to a close, which I hate to do,
Oh wow, wow! It's
because
almost a quarter to 10.
you
I'm an old
know.
man too. Come on now. And I embrace that. I embrace that. I embrace being called.
I want to say thank you to all of the people who have joined in. Please like this, share this to as many pages and with as many people as you can. We have got to build this type of platform. It does take money to keep this platform moving, so we have ways that you can partner with us and give. You can always text us at 84321, any dollar amount to that number, 84321, and we're ready to receive that. Please consider giving and investing in something like this that really does have the power to reach the masses. You can also go to our website, www.encounterthewell.org, and the last tab there is giving. I want to give a shout out to a couple of folks too who could not be on with us. Brother LeVar, Minister LeVar, who was watching,
Yeah.
Dr. Keith and I, we are a part of a project called Project Goodman, and he is starting this thing up here in the DMV area. There is Jack, I think you have a couple of pictures of the Project Goodman piece. Please go to that website. They're the good men. You can see brother T. Keith there, myself, and a couple other folks. Good brothers, man. Good brothers. All good brothers. And Minister LeVar is always connecting great people. You see it there, www.projectgoodmen.org. You can donate to that. We always want to give a shout out to folks who are doing amazing work in the communities. So please check that out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow him. It is a model that Brother LeVar has come up with himself, and he is doing some amazing things with it. I was trying to find, he gave me a couple of notes, but it's an innovative and intergenerational mentoring experience focused on ensuring the legacy of Black manhood. Founded by LeVar Jones, a 22 youth work veteran and minister, centered on the mentoring circle concept that removes the traditional sense of mentoring. It is about storytelling. It is about engaging folks from all ages to be mentors to each other. Both Dr. Tony and myself sit on the advisory board of that, so please check that out when you get a chance. Mama Annie says 15 more minutes. I know. It's so great. There is also, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to end on a piece in a few seconds that Dr. Keith has, a video of his, a poem that he does, and then we'll come back. And thank you, Gina, for putting the Project Goodman website in the comments. Also, a shout out to all the folks from Capitol Hill United Methodist Church, from Gethsemane United Methodist Church, from First Baptist of Highland Park who were on. We love y'all. To my grandson T2 who was on, and all of the other folks. Pastor Murray. Pastor Murray will be on with us next week. With the week after, we're going to take a break next week. Then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about. I know a lot of you say, okay, this is rich conversation. How do we move forward? What are the steps to going forward? And so when we come back, we're going to have a rich conversation about how do we move forward from this place. Now that we've talked about it, now that we have an open ear about it, what are the steps that we can take to sort of embrace this culture and be more understanding of this culture within the institutional church and even outside of the institutional church? And Dr. Keith, you're always welcome. Yes, Park Royale Clothing, who gave us the hoodie I have on right now, who also provided the hoodies that Brother Brennen and 3J had on last week. We're in partnership with them, and we are giving away a free hoodie to the person or the people who advertise the well for us the most. So all you have to do is share this, share last week's encounter, share the one at the end of the month, and we're going to look and see who shared it the most. And I know, right? T2 has been a real champion. Look, that's his mom on. She's talking
I was
about
over
T2.
here like, I think T2 clearly has taken this over. Like,
Listen, I know, right? So listen, just share it, and we promise we have a free hoodie. We might even have 2 free hoodies, so please do share. And Kim B. Miller, our director of arts, who will be on with us the week after next, who is a poet laureate for Prince William County. Dr. Keith, she's going to love listening to you. And the folks, she has her own line as well. She's going to donate a free T-shirt. So we also have a T-shirt to give away with one of her popular haikus on it. So please see that as well. Helen Ellis says she's been informed and educated. Personally, I'm still not there, but keep informing. That's all right. As long as you feel like you're informed, we appreciate people like you who receive us. And that's all we want, is to make sure that there are ears to all this kind of stuff. A shout out to Amplify Network. If you're not following Amplify Network on all of their social media platforms, our super producer Jackie, who has been putting up all of the stuff for us, the voice of God for us, that's a joke, inside joke for us. Please follow Amplify Network on all the things that they do. Let's do this. Jackie, if we can share Dr. Keith's poem, then we'll come back, and I want you guys to share how they can follow you. Do we have that ready for folks?
I'm worried about seeing my words printed in a book and on the back of all these blurbs like, yo, this is a must-seller. This is a nation's best read. What a wonderful account of an artist's words. Sometimes I think it's absurd for some to only use their art for profit. And I'm not trying to justify the lifestyle of a starving artist, but I feel like if art really is your gift, then starving at some point should be a part of it. I feel like there should be some pangs in the pit of your stomach when your notebooks are empty and ain't no more ink left in your pen. When you aren't changing lives and your paper is thin, y'all have accepted that at some point my economic reality may rely on my poetic balladry, and I'm not sure that my poems are as good as I think they are, but I know that I'm no longer willing to sell my soul just to write some fallacies, and y'all, I have. I've written wedding poems and birthday poems and poems about anniversaries, poems that spice up other people's love lives, and sometimes I feel a little dirty, a little used, and confused about whether they actually heard me. Sometimes I wish I could turn the volume down on some of my performances and transform them into conversations where I could just be Tony Keith, the poet, the educator, and the nerd. Because I want to be known as that artsy fartsy intellect who believed that there was power in his words. And that I not only took responsibility for what I said, but I took responsibility for those of you that heard. Whether or not I made you mad or I convinced you to change the world, let you know, y'all, that sometimes I got tired. And sometimes I got weary, but I kept on writing even when my vision was blurry, even when I couldn't see what was in front of me, even when people told me I need to sit still. They say, Tony, grass never grows under your feet. And I say, Mom, Pop, Grandma, that's because I'm way too busy climbing uphill. I tell them I don't have time to rest until the rest of my poems are written, but I can't stop writing, so none of my poems have endings, just transitions between new beginnings and space savers while refilling the ink in my pen again, or moments when I need to stop, sleep, and dream just to recharge my system, or moments when I need to set my pen on record and just listen. I'm trying to think myself through a literary breakthrough, break down walls of bondage with poetic correspondence, and if I have to, make other people feel uncomfortable, make their spirits feel unsettled, while my feet keep pushing on these pedals, because I've got no choice but to keep pushing through. Like I told y'all my last poem, I'm doing what I'm called to do, and if you're open to receiving, then the next call may be for you. If you don't answer, don't worry, I've got agency, and I will collect when the payment is due. And some people say, Tony, don't you worry, because it is faith that'll get you through. I'm not a religious man, but if that is the case, then faith, I invoke you as my muse. Faith, I invoke you as my power of attorney. I want you to take over for me when I can't take over for myself. I want you to take over from me when my ego can no longer control my wealth. Faith, I don't want you to be afraid to unplug my microphone and knock all my notebooks off the shelf. Faith, don't be afraid to let me flatline. Let me lay there till my heart gets back to beating at a humble grind. Resuscitate the power of God back into my lungs and help me create new poems. Pure and simple ones. Poems about failure. Poems about victory, poems that rhyme occasionally, poems that resist artistic prisons, and poems that enforce a pen as a lethal system. Y'all, I'm a poet afraid to publish. I guess I'm gonna have to keep publishing on these stages and earn some kind of living on free open mic wages. Thank you.
Dope
Oh man,
fire!
there's such a crazy story. Yo, I was outdoors, like that was like Chinatown. Buses are behind me. It was the wildest time. I couldn't hear myself. Thank y'all. Yo, y'all can find me www.tonykeithjr.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter and on Facebook. All of them at Tony Keith Jr. Y'all can Google me. Y'all can Google educational MCs. Please check out my website. As Pastor Jackson mentioned, I tried to write the language on the website so that it's accessible to kind of everybody. So feel free to poke around, figure some things out. If you're curious about the intersection of hip hop and education and spoken word poetry, go forth and prosper. 3J, you all right, bro? You got your...
No, because I'm trying to get my life together. Like, that joke was so, oh my God. Like, woo! I was over here losing it the whole entire time. I'm sorry. God, that was amazing. Oh man.
Thank you.
Woo! Yeah, he shut me down, dog. Like, I feel like he need to be on my next album.
Yo, done. Done.
Hey, done.
Done. Done. Y'all, I'm gonna be on this next album, just let y'all know.
I love it. Hey, listen. Yes, please go check out Dr. Tony Keith. As he said, his website. Please check it out. Also, we're going to have a toiletry drive on MLK, Martin Luther King Avenue, and Eastern Avenue on Monday as we represent the Day of Service, MLK's Day of Service. Please see the flyer on our Instagram page. I'm going to put it up on our Facebook page. Please check those out. I will post it by tonight, if not tomorrow morning. But if you have toiletries that you like to donate, for those who are in need, please do that. Please see that flyer as we put it out there. Brother 3J, do you want to share any last words? Brother Brennen, do you want to share how the people can follow you as well?
Brother Bernie, you can go first. I'm still getting my life together.
Yo, just www.brennenboose.com. Connect with me there. That's the best way right now to connect with me. Yo, just super thankful for the conversation. I had some internet issues and some computer issues, but I mean, I was just glad to jump back in and throw my little 2 cents in. You know, it ain't worth much when you standing next to $500 bills and Dr. Keith and everything, dropping all them gems at the beginning.
Y'all funny.
This was great. I was going to try to follow up after that. It's no good now. That's out.
Let that
So
mic go. Let that man have that mic. You go home with
yeah,
that.
you had I'm going home. So Dr. Keith, man, it was a pleasure to have you on here. You gave me even more insight within the craft. You gave me even more motivation to continue to be the gospel MC that I am today. I thank you for that. Your knowledge is just, oh my God, it was crazy. Like, you confirmed so much for me. I thank you for being able to share with us three, the people that were on here. It was just a blessing just to have you on here, my brother. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I received that. Thank you, 3J. Thank you, man. Bless up to your boy, too.
And let me say this, let me petition a couple of prayers. Julian, as you know, you might have heard at home that his mic sounds a little funny, but that's because Julian is at the hospital with his son. I just want to say, please lift up my nephew, little Julian Jr., who 3J is at the hospital with his son who had cancer before. His cancer is back, but always, I know how Julian talks. He always says, I'm not putting it out there for people to worry. I'm putting it out there for people to pray and to send positive energy, because we can always use that. And so his son is going through the process of chemo, and that's why Julian comes to us from the hospital. But I want to talk about the dedication that 3J has, because he was dedicated enough, even though he's going through, he still wanted to be a part of this evolutionary conversation. And so please just continue to pray for him, for his son, for his family as they go through this process. He has beaten it before, and we know that he will beat it again. But that's even more reason why you should share this kind of programming, because you got people who are dedicated enough to come in, even when their family is he about to put him in the screen? I think that's what he might be about to do. But there he is right there. Let's give a shout out to Lil Jew. What's up, nephew?
Yeah. What
What's
up? What
up,
up? What up?
man?
What up?
I think he was
Yeah,
muted,
you
but it's all
BJ.
good.
Yeah.
My bad. He was muted. My bad. Say what's up, dude. Come here. Say what's up to everybody.
Real simple. And that's all you get.
Right.
Real simple, right?
Very
he,
sweet.
yeah, real simple.
But I love this because hopefully this program will go all over the world, and I want you guys all over the world to send your prayers and your love to my nephew, to 3J's son, to little Julian. All right, listen, I love you guys. I know that people have lives to get to. We appreciate you for being a part of this encounter. We invite you to take a break next week, go back and rewatch the first two. Take a moment to share this as much as you can. We have a hoodie, maybe 2 hoodies, and a shirt to give away. Join us this weekend. Follow everybody who's been on this panel at their social media sites, their websites. Listen, hire Dr. Keith, hire Brennen, hire 3J at your churches. That's how you can start. That's one way you can start, is by asking them to come out and be a part of your platform. I mean, hire them tonight.
Come
Contact
on,
them
speak
tonight.
that.
They might not get back with you tonight, but contact them tonight, and then you're going to get a message from them tomorrow telling you how you can get them. Invest in our folks,
Speak
y'all.
that.
And if you
Speak
ain't black,
that.
invest in other people so that we can
So
enrich our society and our culture.
Thank you.
I love y'all. And a shout out to Jackie, who was in the background, and Brother Terrence
Yes,
at
Jackie,
Amplify
we love you,
Network. We
Jackie.
love y'all, and we thank y'all so much for this platform. Listen, I love y'all. There's nothing y'all can do about that. Thank you so much for being on this platform. To each one of our guests. When we come back, we're talking about the path forward, how to move forward with all of the knowledge that you've gotten. And Brother Keith, if you want to be a part of that conversation, you're always welcome. And if you just want to log on socially through social media, you can do that too. You're always invited to be a part of this encounter.
I'm a
We
huge
love
fan.
y'all. We're
Definitely
praying for
consider me
you.
a follower, man. I'm absolutely going to make sure I continue to check out what y'all got cooking because y'all are absolutely onto something. I'm crystal clear about it.
Awesome, awesome,
Appreciate
awesome.
it, man.
So please check in with him. Please check in with everybody, and we'll talk to you guys a few weeks from now. Love y'all, and peace out.
Word, peace,
peace.
everybody.